Today, we're diving deep into the very edge of human consciousness, and we're going to do it by exploring one man's incredibly vivid and frankly terrifying personal story. What happens when a simple attempt to explore your own mind turns into a brush with something else? Let's get into it. Just imagine hearing those words. You're not quite asleep, but you're not really awake either. This one chilling sentence is right at the heart of the experience we're breaking down. A message that completely blurs the line between a dream, a hallucination, and maybe even a genuine warning. So this all revolves around a guy named Louis Anderson. On what seemed like a totally normal night, he decided he was going to experiment with something called binaural beats, just to see what would happen. But what he found, well, it was an experience that would challenge his entire understanding of what's real. And get this, it all happens super fast. At 10 p.m., he's just going to sleep. But by 11:30, he is thrown into this unbelievably strange state. And then, just 12 minutes later, he wakes up. But the feeling, that physical sensation, was far from over. Now, this wasn't some fuzzy, half-remembered dream. Anderson describes it all with crystal clarity. He was riding a bicycle through these dark, amber-lit streets he'd never seen before, and in the background, he could hear a car radio playing a news broadcast. It felt totally real, totally tangible, and just deeply weird. And the people he met, just as strange. There was this group of people in a garage that just radiated a feeling of dread. Then a woman on a bike who seemed to be both a stranger and some kind of guide. And the most unsettling part, a man in a hood who felt eerily familiar, almost like an acquaintance of his who had actually passed away. At exactly 11:42 p.m., Anderson snaps awake. But this was nothing like waking up from a nightmare. His fingers were curled into tight fists, his wrists were completely stiff, and his entire body was just buzzing with this intense pins and needle sensation. His own words were that he felt like a corpse and a newborn baby all at the same time. And that right there is the million-dollar question, isn't it? The sheer vividness of the whole thing, the specific characters, and those intense physical symptoms, it all forces us to ask, what in the world actually happened to Louis Anderson that night? Okay, to even start to unpack this, we gotta get on the same page about a couple of key ideas. Let's quickly break down the two major things that were going on here. First up, what was he even listening to? Binaural beats? This isn't just music. It's kind of like an auditory illusion. You play two slightly different frequencies, one in each ear, and your brain basically gets tricked into hearing a third, phantom beat. The idea is that this can actually guide your brain into different states, from deep meditation to, well, maybe even astral projection. And this is what he was hoping for, an out-of-body experience, or OBE. It's exactly what it sounds like, that powerful, distinct feeling that your consciousness, your very sense of you, has literally separated from your physical body. It's something people have talked about for centuries, but it's still something science really struggles to explain. All right, so with that in mind, let's put on our detective hats. Is there a grounded, scientific reason for what Anderson felt, especially those really specific physical feelings? The number one suspect, scientifically speaking, is something called sleep paralysis. This is a pretty well-known phenomenon. It's basically when your mind wakes up, but your body's muscles are still stuck in that sleep mode paralysis. And when you put the classic symptoms of sleep paralysis side by side with Anderson's story, well, the overlap is just undeniable. Being unable to move? Check. The whole body tingling with pins and needles? Check. Vivid, terrifying hallucinations with unsettling figures? Big check. It seems like a perfect match. But, and this is a huge but, Anderson himself completely rejects this explanation. He insists the feeling was just different. For him, it wasn't just a scary dream while his body was asleep. He says it was a profound feeling of actual death and transition. And that pushes us to look at a much more extreme possibility. So this brings us to the near-death experience, or NDE. And it's important to understand the difference. Sleep paralysis is a known glitch in your sleep cycle. An NDE isn't a sleep disorder at all. It's something that happens because of real physical trauma, most often when the brain is starved of oxygen. The physiology behind an NDE lines up surprisingly well. Think about it. If the heart were to stop, even for a moment. The lack of oxygen, that's hypoxia, is known to cause incredibly powerful hallucinations. And then, as the heart kickstarts again, the rush of blood back into your limbs, that's reperfusion, can cause the exact pins and needles feeling Anderson reported. The symptoms are a disturbingly good fit. So we have these two competing scientific theories, but Anderson's own hypothesis about what happened to him, it pushes us even further into territory that really starts to challenge how we think about consciousness itself. He asks this really provocative question: what if we've got it all backwards? What if that feeling we call sleep paralysis isn't the brain waking up in a paralyzed body, but instead it's the physical shock of your consciousness slamming back into your body after it's been somewhere else? Now, I know this might sound pretty out there, but it does touch on some real, though highly speculative, frontier theories like quantum consciousness. The idea, and this is a huge oversimplification, is that maybe consciousness isn't just neurons firing. Some theories, like Orkwar, suggest it might come from quantum processes that aren't necessarily stuck inside the physical brain. It's an unproven, wild idea, but it's a framework that would, in theory, allow for an OBE. So, where does all of this leave us? I mean, we've gone from one guy's weird night to neuroscience and even quantum physics. We're left with a profound mystery and a few very different ways of trying to make sense of it all. Let's just lay it all out one last time. We have three competing explanations. 1. Sleep paralysis, a known sleep glitch that perfectly explains the physical sensations and the hallucinations. 2. A near-death event, a real physiological crisis that explains the symptoms and that profound feeling of dying. And 3, consciousness separation, the idea that it was a genuine out-of-body experience, just like Anderson believed. And here's the bottom line. What this all boils down to is a fundamental clash. On one side, you have Anderson's deeply personal, subjective experience. He felt like he died and left his body. On the other side, you have what our current science can actually measure and prove. And right now, those two things don't quite line up. So, Anderson's bizarre and terrifying journey forces us to confront one of the oldest and deepest questions there is, leaving us with this one final thought. Where does our body actually end? And where does our consciousness truly begin?